Reclaimed is the podcast for the woman reclaiming her power through conversation, somatics, breathwork, plant medicine, and epic conversations. I am Kyla Gagnon, and this is Reclaimed. Hello, sweet friends. Welcome back to the conversation. I have with me today Sarah Lambert, who is not only a really beautiful friend, but a woman who I'm excited for you all to get to know if you don't already know Sarah. Sarah's a dedicated therapist and life coach who helps women break free from perfectionism, people pleasing, and trying to be everything to everyone. Does that sound familiar? Growing up in an environment where love felt tied to achievements, Sarah struggled with self-worth, anxious attachments, and the need to always be achieving. Through her journey of deep self-exploration and value-based growth, she discovered the freedom of embracing her authentic self, of which practicing breathwork has been an essential tool. And today, Sarah leads a thriving group practice that offers talk therapy, somatic therapy, and art therapy, as well as coaching and community workshops. She's passionate about empowering women to reconnect with their emotions, reclaim their power, and create lives that are aligned with their truest value. You know I am here for this. Sit back, enjoy the conversation with Sarah. Sarah, my love, welcome.
Hello, hello. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Before we get into it, I'm going to ask you, what are you currently reclaiming?
Mm, Great question. Yeah,
It is a great question.
reclaiming. Well, as you were and I were chatting about, and I think we'll talk more about in this episode, I've been doing parts work therapy, or also named IFS.
Mhm.
And one of my parts that has come forward, we call her Flower Child Sarah.
Mhm.
And I will say that is what I am reclaiming, is the energy of this part of me that is, she's ultimately just so connected to the earth. Like
Mhm.
Flower Child Sarah, like, has moved to Salt Spring Island, and
Of
she
course she has.
has, she has chickens, she has land, my she her my property is like adjacent to a stream where I like walk with my like newborn baby. Like
Oh, God.
this is, yeah, which I don't have a child at this time, but that is the vision that Flower Child Sarah is creating. So I'm reclaiming this part of me that is, I guess, unburdened by all of the like shoulds and the needing to do it, being in the doing energy, the
Mhm.
masculine. I know there's like a lot of layers to that answer.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's kind of hard to summarize, but I feel like you know the energy that I'm describing.
I do. And I also would like to reclaim Flower Child Kyla.
Yeah.
Yes. She sounds magnificent.
Mhm.
Let's go like right away into it because we're speaking about parts work and IFS, which yes, I am familiar with, and I trust that a lot of listeners are, and I also believe that a lot probably aren't, or at least it's very, very fresh. Do you want to dive in a little bit and give like layman's terms for what that is?
Mhm. Yeah, so IFS stands for Internal Family Systems, and it is a form of psychotherapy that was developed by Dr. Richard Schwartz. I hope I'm saying that right.
I think you are,
Um,
Schwartz.
yeah, and so basically he looks at humans as sort of this like system of our inner parts that are all sort of connected through our self energy. And so that's kind of, our self energy is like the most purest, loving form of ourselves, like the most compassionate, the most, open, the most curious part of ourselves. And then we have these parts that sort of start to make themselves known as time goes on. So he talks about protective parts and burdened or exiled parts. And so when we're kids, and I know you talk about this a lot in breath, right? Is that we go through these traumatic experiences, whether they're like, it's little traumas or big traumas where
Mhm.
people are telling us, don't do this, be quiet, sit down, be small. And that creates these burdened and exiled parts within us,
Mhm.
right? Where it's like, oh, no, I'm bad if I do this thing, or I can't let myself be seen in this way. And then we develop these protective parts as coping mechanisms. So
Mhm.
a couple of examples would be like, the overachiever, the people pleaser. These all stem from these protective parts that are like, if you do this in this way, then you'll be good, you'll be loved, you'll be all of
Mhm.
these things.
Yeah, it's such fascinating work. And We learned just a little bit about it in breath, and then of course like given tools to deepen into it. And I've done just a little bit, and we were speaking about it before we hit record. The complexity that actually goes into becoming fully IFS certified is it's a lot, and for very good reason. Like it's such a deep
Hmm.
practice. Um, okay, so can I ask, have you found any other parts that you feel open to sharing about?
Mm.
And you don't have
Mm.
to. Those parts are very tender.
Yeah, I appreciate you asking that and offering that. Yeah, so my protective part, I would say, one of my most sort of like dominant parts is we call her CEO Sarah.
Oh, I can see this.
Uh-huh. Yes.
I know
Yes.
her.
Yeah, right. So yeah, CEO Sarah, she's getting shit done. CEO Sarah is a perfectionist. She's a high achiever. She's gotten the good grades. She started the business. She's growth focused. She's getting her taxes done. Like CEO Sarah is running the show.
Mm-hmm.
She's an A type. CEO Sarah has no time for rest, no time for play,
Mm-hmm.
no
Mm-hmm.
time for creativity. Um, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
she's a boss. She gets shit done. So that's CEO Sarah.
Yeah.
Um, there is a really, really tender part that
Mm-hmm.
I've also discovered. And it's like emotional even like starting to talk about it because
Yeah.
this I had a very profound experience in breath with her and I shared it at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And oh my gosh, I'm trying to remember the name has escaped me in this moment. I'm getting the visual. And she's
Mm-hmm.
basically this imprisoned part that CEO
Mm-hmm.
Sarah has kind of cast aside and said, like, your needs don't matter. You don't need, you don't need to rest. You don't need to take care of yourself. And it's kind of just that, like, push through no matter what
Mm-hmm.
mentality. And so
Mm-hmm.
the part that is kind of just like this exile that doesn't even
Yeah.
feel safe to speak
Yeah.
up, doesn't even feel safe to have needs.
Yeah.
And it's like, having met her now, it makes me emotional talking about it
Mm-hmm.
because then there's pain that comes forward from having like ignored
Mm-hmm.
and abandoned this part for
Mm-hmm.
so long.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Hmm.
Thank you for sharing all of that.
Hmm.
The whole like this journey that we choose to take of self-growth and evolution, and some people call it healing, and I think it's all the same. It's really like not for the faint of heart.
Hmm.
And it's so multi-layered. It's so multi-layered. If we think about if I think for myself, if I think about like younger Kyla, who and so I was always deemed um highly self-sufficient. Like I was just so
Hmm.
self-sufficient, which I sort of wore as like a badge of honor. And I thought it was cool because I was an only child, but then in terms of like my extended family, my cousins, I was the youngest of a lot. There was like 12 of us and we were super close, and it went by like every year. So if, when I was 5, it was like I was 5 and Carla was 6 and Dana was 7 and 8 and 9 and like super close, but I was the youngest and I just hated being the youngest. And so this sense of like, oh, you're hyper independent and super self-sufficient, I was quite proud of. And that trait has, of course, supported me in life, right? Like when my mom died, I picked myself up and got a job and found a place to live and did all of the things and carried forward and started a career. And um, it has supported me. And then when I reflect back now, there's the layer of gratitude that I had that skill. And then there's the layer of I shouldn't have needed that. Like why did a young girl have to be so self-sufficient? And then there's the layer of like there's anger with that, there's sadness with that, which then leads into feelings towards parents. And there's anger, and then
Hmm.
there's grief about feeling like it's just so layered. And and
Yeah.
and it's all okay and it's all perfectly fine and beautiful, and I think it's important that we like really, really feel all of those layers and really let those layers exist. And they all have value and they're all important. But holy cow, like, people say healing's not linear. It's definitely not. Growth is not linear. And it's also not like it's not rainbows and butterflies, but on the other side, I really think it is,
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
know? So, okay, my question is because you and I have done quite a bit of breath work together. We've retreated together. Gosh, you've come in and supported through that visualization and meditation journey you led us through in the Rewild retreat was so good.
Hmm.
And so my question is like, what brought you to this journey? And I don't know if you call it a healing journey or just like the evolution of life or self growth, whatever you title it. Like, how did you get here? What was the path?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned that meditation and that it still stays with you because
Mm-hmm.
reflecting back after having done my parts work training, I
Mm-hmm.
realized that that was a parts work
Mm.
meditation,
Sure was.
right? And without going into story about that, I mean, I will be incorporating more of that into our upcoming retreat because understanding, I didn't even consciously understand what exactly I was unlocking through
Mm-hmm.
that meditation. But now
Mm-hmm.
going back with the knowledge that I have, I'm like, wow, it feels even more powerful understanding
Yeah.
how that the connections that are there. So,
Yeah.
my journey, how I got to where I am now in the work that I do. Is
Mm-hmm.
that the question? Mm.
Yeah, even like yes, the work that you do, but even your own journey, like working with a therapist, doing parts work, like
Hmm.
yeah, all of it, your whole
Yeah,
journey.
yeah. Mm. As many of us who are in these helping and healing professions, I think the story often starts with, you know, wanting to turn our own wounds into our pain into purpose, our wounds into
Mm-hmm.
wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a bit of that, and there's a bit of always feeling called. So I was actually thinking back to I was about maybe 21 or 22, and I had this feeling that I wanted to become a therapist. And I remember chatting with someone at the time who had been working as a therapist and asking her about it. And she shared with me like a really traumatic story of one of her very first clients that she wasn't really prepared to work with or was just kind of
Mm-hmm.
caught off guard by this, and she kind of steered me away, steered me off the path. And at the time I had gone done some business school, taken some time off, and then ended up not choosing to become a therapist at that time, going to school and doing my kinesiology undergrad. And then it wasn't until years later that I kind of got put back on the path. So I feel like there's kind of always been this calling
Mm-hmm.
towards it, but we
Mm-hmm.
also, these things happen exactly when the timing is right. And so fast forward many years later, and I was navigating my sister's mental health. So she was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder and was going through some really, really, really difficult times and suicidal ideation and experiences
Mm-hmm.
and all of that was really, really hard.
Mm-hmm.
And then at one point, she made a choice that she did not want to be here anymore, and that's it's hard to share, and I know it's hard for people to hear.
Yeah.
Um, but of course, there's also some relief, right? There's a part that comes in
Yeah.
and says like, well, she's not suffering anymore, and there's a part of her that actually had really wanted and just said
Yeah.
like this journey, this lifetime, this particular journey of my soul to the earth
Mm-hmm.
is too much, and this is no more. So
Yeah.
that obviously sent me into that really launched the fast track of my healing journey and
Mm-hmm.
starting my grief therapy. And it was my therapist at the time who said to me, I think that you could do this and you would be really good at it. And so I was kind of, navigating my own grief, and then finally came to a place of like, okay, this makes sense. Of
Mm-hmm.
this is the next stage for me. So that was when I did my therapy training, and learning about talk therapy. It was amazing. It served me through that stage of my
Mm-hmm.
growth. And so when I started working as a therapist, I incorporated a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy, narrative therapy. I had all my worksheets ready, and I gave people homework. And then, after some time goes by, I think this is the journey that a lot of therapists have, and a lot of people who are doing the work, the healing work, who are either going to therapy or using other tools, is
Mm-hmm.
that you can only go so far through intellectualization
Yeah.
process, right?
Yeah.
Thinking yourself out of a situation.
Hmm.
And that's when, simultaneously I was starting to incorporate more breath work into my own practice. I've been an avid yogi for, oh my gosh, probably 15 years now. And so that kind of baseline was already there for me. And so then incorporating other somatic practices really made sense and really was able
Hmm.
to take me to that next level of
Hmm.
accessing, subconscious programming and the feelings that I was really holding in my body that were
Hmm.
actually those programs that were holding me back from making changes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so are you, yeah, I know you are incorporating some somatic practices into your work. And what
Hmm.
do you, yeah, what are some of them? I know you're about to be taking your breathwork training at some point in the future. You will be a
Yeah.
breath facilitator. Yay. Yeah, what are some other really supportive tools that you use?
Yeah. So the parts work itself incorporates a lot of
Hmm.
somatic practices, right? So
Hmm.
it's if we're navigating a feeling, if it's like, oh, I'm feeling anxious right now.
Hmm.
Okay, well, where do you feel that in your body? And then we're
Hmm.
navigating, okay, how to sort of either hold space for that feeling using breath and body based practices. Maybe it's moving the body in a certain way, or maybe it's setting the breath into a certain part.
Hmm.
And sometimes following those feelings, also, we can navigate, okay, what is it that this feeling is telling me about what's happening here? What does it need? And so we're also kind of checking back in with the body as we're like talking. There's a kind of a weaving of that talk therapy with
Hmm.
somatic
Hmm.
therapy of like, okay, well, how does it feel now? So
Yeah.
yeah, it's closer to the parts work than it is to breath
Hmm.
work at this time, but I do want to just continue to weave them more and more together.
Yeah. It's
Hmm.
such cool work. I work with a girlfriend of mine's a somatic therapist, and we occasionally will do sessions together.
Hmm.
And just the like it comes back to, and I talk about it a lot in general, but definitely in breath, but like the wisdom of our body is so insane. It's so
Hmm.
insane.
Hmm.
Without remembering the details of a story or going into whole dialogue about one of my sessions, I remember starting this session with her feeling I was like so fragmented, and it felt like I remember describing it felt like ping pong balls in my head. Like there was just so much happening. And similar to how you just described, like we tuned into the feeling, we stayed with it, we invited my body to move in the way of that. Like we did the whole thing and followed it. And, after, I don't know, 5 to 7 minutes or so, I think I burst out laughing because the clarity was just like so there. And I just
Hmm.
needed to be present. I just needed to be present to the chaos that I was feeling, to get curious about it. And then as soon as that part of me felt seen and okay, it was like ding, ding, ding. And the information, the answers, the clarity, it was all right there. And it was like, oh my God, it's all actually, I'll say so simple. And I don't mean that, I do mean it, but I don't want it to take away from like the struggles that people go through, but we complicate things. Like we dialogue too much. We story tell about our feelings, and as soon as we start storytelling about our feelings, we're no longer feeling them, and so we
Hmm.
amplify them. We amplify it and amplify it. It's like, if I was to call you up and say, Sarah, I'm so angry. Can you believe what Cam did? And rah, 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 and just started to go off. I would stay in the amplification of like this angry feeling, but I'm not actually feeling it. I'm just like making this big thing about it, this big story.
Hmm.
Whereas if I could actually just presence, or maybe that word, some people are like, what are you talking about? But if I could just be with the feeling and not storytell about it, it would
Hmm.
process through and it would actually all be fine in the end. But me as a human, us as humans, we just overcomplicate. This body is so
Hmm.
brilliant. It's so keen to give us what we want.
Well, and that
And
comes back to, I think you and I both say this all the time, that like all the feelings are meant for feeling.
yeah.
When we resist, the more that it's like, oh, I'm angry, but I don't want to be angry, then that just creates, it just lives in the body in like a little
Mm-hmm.
knot or a tension or whatever it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
and it's just going to stay there, and it's going to
Yeah.
keep pulling on things and keep constricting until you let it be heard and let it. And holding that space, part of holding that space is understanding, okay, well, what are you trying to tell me? Like, what the anger is usually calling for something to be different. And
Yeah.
so when we call, you call up that friend, and sometimes we just need a good vent. So
Yes.
fair, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes that process helps to just,
Mm-hmm.
unburden that.
Mm-hmm.
But oftentimes, if it's just that phone call, and then we're not coming back to, okay, what can I do about this? Like, am I needing to have a conversation with my partner? Is this anger pointing to like a resentment for something that I didn't do? Like, what does it need? And
Mm-hmm.
that can only be done when we actually give space and attention to those feelings. And
Yeah.
oftentimes it's the felt sense in the body that's showing up first and telling us that feeling is there.
Yeah. And our feelings are like they're information portals. Like it's there
Mhm.
for a reason. It's there for a reason. And this desire to, I don't want to feel that way. I don't want to feel that way is keeping us in a perpetual state of suffering. It's like
Mhm.
it's resisting what is. And if we could just learn, and I understand that most of us have been raised in families that didn't know how to do this. So this is it's fair. Like we're all doing a whole lot of unlearning and relearning. But if we can choose to learn to to actually honor that this feeling exists for a reason and stop the resistance, our level of suffering will actually go down significantly.
Mhm.
And those feelings that we're all so petrified of feeling, like for me, it's anger. I have a really hard time going to anger. I'll go to sadness right away. Like that anger, it's not too much for me. It's not bad. It's not scary. It's just unfamiliar. And on the other side, it's really good. And yeah, it's like, it's information. What is it here to show us? What is it here to tell us? The human.
Mhm.
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 The human.
It's interesting that you mentioned going to sadness rather than anger, because oftentimes it's the other way around,
I know.
right? So often anger is actually the secondary emotion or the primary
Yeah.
emotion. I'm forgetting
Yeah.
what's like that. To sadness,
Yeah. Anger's the
secondary.
secondary.
Yeah,
Sadness is the primary. Yeah.
right. And so we're masking, or we're feeling more comfortable
Hmm.
with an outward display of anger, and we're kind of
Yeah.
hiding the sadness that's underneath.
Yeah. And I think for me, it's like sadness has always been maybe, and I haven't thought even about my actual experience, but I am led to believe, based on how comfortable I am with sadness, that I was tended to when I was sad. I probably
Mm.
got attention.
Mm.
Um, and people, people aren't so, some people are afraid of sadness, but people are less afraid to be with you in your sadness than to be with you in your anger, is a story that I have, or have had. I don't know if I fully believe that. Regardless, I have totally felt comfortable in sadness. And I've recently learned through a conversation with my dad about my mother's relationship to anger that I was unaware of
Mm.
and would never have known because she's not here anymore. But my mom, when I previous to me being born, my mom was an alcoholic and um, started up right away as soon as I was out again, and was a really angry, not nice person when she was drinking,
Mm.
specifically towards my dad. And so he was telling me some stories that I knew nothing about. And so it is all starting to make sense to me where my subconscious picked up on not wanting anything to do with that. Like, I will not be that. And it's the only thing that I can think of because I was never raised really seeing anger. Like there was just, I don't really remember any fighting or drama, but knowing now what my dad has told me, it makes sense that little me picked up on that emotion is not okay. It's not okay. And so it's actually something that I'm working on. Like I really want to be able to meet anger because I celebrate it in others. I really do. I love a good rage release. I like superficially can hit anger. I can totally go into a rage
Mm.
release, but I don't generally have a tangible, like there's not a thing that I'm angry about. It's fascinating thing because I'm
Mm.
like, I want to meet my anger. I really, really do. So that's my,
Also possible that you just don't really have that much to be angry about right now.
well, in this moment, I don't think I really, I guess I don't know. That's true.
I think you've connected with your flower child, Kyla, more than you think.
I
But
am a
no, not
hippie at
to,
heart.
yeah, not to
Hmm.
diminish that. We all have things to. But
Mm,
yes, it makes total sense. I mean, given your past experiences and what was kind of modeled to you and not modeled to you at the same time, that
hmm.
there would be that tendency. And I think there's also there's often kind of like stereotypical gendered differences around how we express and how comfortable we are with
Yeah.
anger as well.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I had a psychic tell me one time, I love me a good psychic.
Hmm.
And I know you do too. I was probably 26 or 27. So my mom had died like 6 or 7 years earlier. And she said to me, "You're so angry. You're so angry at
Mm.
her." And I was like,
What at your mom?
yeah. I was like, oh,
Mm.
I am absolutely not angry at her. I'm quite the opposite. And she was like, no, you're angry at her, and that's okay.
Mm.
And even now, I'm like, I don't, just, I just don't think I'm angry at her. Anyway, it's
Mm.
just, so it's been in my, in my space for years, this
What
relationship to anger.
I'm curious what feels important to you about connecting with your anger? Like what would be different?
I think it feels like I haven't met the full like breadth of myself if
Mm.
I haven't met that part. And I believe that as a woman, like that's a really important part. Like our fire and our like it feels important. Um yeah. Yeah, so it feels like
Mm.
I am missing a piece of me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm. Reclaiming all of the parts.
I'm reclaiming my anger.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I also think that I feel like you have a fire that is not necessarily
Mhm.
fueled by anger.
Mhm. Yeah, I do. I do. Thank you for that. My best friend, Serena, calls it my bitchy side.
Mm.
She's like, there's a bitchy side. You need to bring it out more.
Mm.
And, and yeah, Cam sees it. I feel it. I mean, I get fired up about things. Yeah, and maybe actually, as we're speaking, maybe what my idea of anger is just different. Like perhaps what I'm feeling is that it's just more contained than what I have
Mm.
learned it to be, you know?
Than like the story of what anger is supposed to look like.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned rage circles as well,
Hmm.
or rage release. And
Hmm.
I'm curious if I asked what like the difference between anger and rage,
Mm.
what does that look like?
Mm. Okay.
Putting you on the spot.
Oh, yeah, no, this is so good. And I'm wondering if there is a it's almost like rage is just that like anger is like I was just on a call with a client. She was describing feeling like a pop bottle shaken up at the top, the lid's on.
Mm, for
Uh,
sure.
yeah, and so it's almost like that's the anger, and then when the lid blows, that's the rage.
Mhm.
Now, when I say that out loud, that makes it sound like it's out of hand, and I don't think that that's necessarily the case, specifically in like a cultivated rage ritual or rage circle. It's not out of hand; it's incredibly contained in a really beautiful way. But that's sort of like the difference. It's like big and bigger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I wonder too, it's like this is so fascinating having a little therapy session, but I'm curious now if when and I don't do them often, I've really probably only done a few rage rituals. Part of me is like, was that just all a display? Like, was that just me acting and
Mm.
pretending like I have this built up of emotion? Because here's the thing is like, I've actually never, I've always worn my heart on my sleeve. Like, if I'm emotional, you're going to see it. So there isn't a lot of built up, like, you know what I mean? Or pent up.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, and that, I mean, makes total sense as someone who does the work that you do,
Hmm.
because so much of breath work, and I notice a difference when I'm going consistently, and especially during stressful times of my life, and particularly before my cycle as well. If I have practiced breath and I've had that opportunity to release whatever needs to be released, it's like that pressure. It's like when you start to open the bottle and you like some of the pressure lets out, and it's not so like
Hmm.
everything is like right under the surface, right?
Yeah. 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 That's valid. I do have
Mm-hmm.
a lot of opportunity to release.
Mm-hmm.
On the topic of breath work, because I know you love it, can we talk? Do you have any fun stories or experiences that you can share?
Mm, of course.
I love them. Okay. Pardon the interruption, my dear friends. I wanted to invite you to join us inside of my breathwork community, Breathe with Kyla. This is a mentorship, community based membership where we come together at least twice a month for conscious connected breathwork journeys. But there are many other opportunities to connect as community. You have access to a growing library of somatic practices, breathwork, meditation, yoga, movement, and you are supported on your journey of deepening relationship with self, regulating your emotions, regulating your nervous system, and ultimately just becoming a more grounded, connected, aligned, epic version of yourself. Right now, you can join for $69 a month, and there's a little coupon code in the show notes to save you some bucks. I cannot wait to see you inside. Okay.
Fun stories. Okay, fun.
Mm, they don't have to be fun. I mean, they don't have to be quintessential fun. They could be, powerful and healing,
Interesting
but
stories. Oh my
interesting.
gosh. Well, one that comes to mind right on the topic of what we were just talking about, it's very like at the surface right now. Because I'm not really someone who strongly identifies with anger or rage either. I have a mom who's like, she's so sweet. She's very like, well mannered, even tempered. Like, I don't think I'd ever heard her yell for like
Oh,
most of my childhood. But there was one day where something set her off, and whatever it was, I never did again. Right.
of course.
So, um, breathwork. This was, we did the breath in the dome up at Scotts Falls.
Yes.
Hmm. Just a, and it was raining that day. It was so magical. And, and all I can remember was, we dropped into the breath. We were in the middle of the ceremony, and something came through me that I just needed to let out the most guttural scream. And I feel like I still envision, I feel like it was like a cartoon where, like the video is like zooming out and out and out, and like you can hear this scream for miles, and like birds are flying away.
I can see that. I have
Yeah.
that visual. Hmm.
Uh-huh. And it was like, all I can describe it as was ancestral rage. Like
Yeah.
that did not come from, I don't know where that came from, and it was
Hmm.
not in my lifetime. Like it was from
Hmm.
like my like witch ancestors that were burned at
Yeah.
the stake.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was just incredibly powerful as well, knowing that like even if as somebody who maybe doesn't have a life that commands a lot of anger, or someone who hasn't identified with their anger, like we are still carrying these
Hmm.
traumas, right? These
Yeah.
intergenerational contracts. And even in Breathwork, we talk about that as well. They call them legacy burdens. And so there's a practice that we
Oh.
can do for sort of helping to say, okay, here's your rage. You can take it with you. I'm not going to carry this anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Whew. Yeah, that's a good one. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I like the visual. That dome, I mean, if there's any space that is set up to receive a release like that, it's that dome in that forest.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I love it.
I do too.
I know. There's so
Tell me.
many. I'm trying to think of like,
Oh,
are there any other themes? I feel like I
oh,
mean,
oh, gosh. Well, I don't know. I mean, the reason I ask, I'm always just fascinated by what comes
mm,
through for people because it's just so different all the time. And And as a facilitator, you can have like you can sort of have an idea maybe about what's
Mm,
coming up, especially if you've, gone deep with this client and their stuff. But in group sessions where everyone's there and I don't know the depth of everybody's stuff, I can only assume. And half the time I'm way off because I'm not them. So I'm always just fascinated to hear. But also for the people who have never experienced breath work and are curious, it's always kind
mm,
of neat to share some bits of what can be possible and the various degrees of what's possible. And yeah, so
mm.
no direction.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, one of the reasons that I love and somatic practices, um, particularly dropping into a ceremony, is you can't really anticipate what's going to come, right? Like,
You like that? Does it scare you half to
no,
death?
actually, well, that I'm afraid every time.
Me
Of
too.
course, there's always a resistance that's like, oh, do we have to do this,
Mhm,
right? But there's the
mhm,
other part of me that goes like, I know what's on the other side of this,
mhm.
right? The relief, the weight that is lifted, the unburdening that comes from releasing something I didn't even know that I was carrying.
Yeah.
And in ways that, that again, that conscious mind often gets in the way, right? My
Mhm,
story is I'm a good girl and I play by the rules
mhm.
and I'm nice and all of these things. But then who knew that I have this like rage that resides like deep, 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 deep
Yeah.
inside of me.
Yeah.
So yeah, but on
Yeah.
the flip side of that,
Hmm.
yeah, for anyone who's never been in a breathwork ceremony before, I feel like hearing that story, you'd be like, ah, it's like maybe a little bit intimidating, or maybe some people are, you're just like fully ready for it. And you're like, I'm all in, right? But I've also had many breathwork ceremonies that were gentle and playful, and I often get into these kind of circular movements, and the last one, I actually got up, I was in the corner having my own little ecstatic dance journey. And
Mhm.
so there's also so much levity that can come and so
Yeah.
much brightness and accessing of, um, this joy that had
Yeah.
also kind of been like stifled and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
yeah,
I feel like that session where you were dancing was Flower Child Sarah
it was Flower Child
embodied.
Sarah.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
Bless her heart.
Hmm.
Okay, so I want to talk before I don't mention this, and I just don't want to forget about it. Can we talk about your upcoming retreat in April?
Yes, yes, yes.
And yes, please, just that.
Mhm.
Tell us the things.
Yeah, so we're doing a weekend retreat. It's called the Art of Empowerment, and it is a
Mhm,
women's retreat based on Vancouver Island, and it's happening in the Highlands. So it's super
mm,
accessible for
mhm,
anyone who is, if you live in Victoria, it's just a short drive away, which is really, really amazing to be able
mhm,
to just hop in for the weekend.
mhm,
But it's myself and Mandy co-facilitating. So Mandy is an art therapist and somatic therapist as well.
mhm.
And so we're going to be incorporating some of the things that we've already been talking about today in terms of what happens on a retreat weekend, right? Just creating that space for people to share in healing in a community environment. But we'll be doing some creative exploration, which is really nice as well, because that's one of the so creativity is one of the 8 C's of self, like our highest self energy is able to access this creativity, and that's often shut down as life goes on, right? Either it's just not prioritized for adults, right? There's so many creative programs for children. It's such a and it's not creativity for the sake of I need to create this like magnificent art piece. It's like
Yeah.
how can you play and explore with tossing, chalk on the driveway or,
Mhm,
paint on a canvas. It doesn't need to become anything. So,
mhm.
releasing that need to be an artist in order to engage in creative practices.
Yeah,
Um, Yeah. And then we have Kyla, you're going to be there offering a breathwork ceremony, which we're
mhm.
super excited about
I
because
am.
breathwork is amazing. And then to be able to pair that with a little bit of creative integration
Yeah,
afterwards as well. So capturing, like
yeah.
oftentimes we come out of breath and we go, what do I do with what I just
Mhm.
experienced? Right? We share in circle and we get that opportunity to decompress a little bit, but then there's still sometimes that's like maybe I had this powerful visual experience, or maybe I feel like I need to write this down or capture in some way and remember what it is. Even though, I mean, our soul remembers. My
Always.
experiences are like embedded new core memories, but
Mm.
I think it'll be really powerful to be able to integrate it in that way.
I think it's such a beautiful combination. I have two thoughts right now. One is, of course, you ended up partnering with an art therapist. I remember, I don't know if Rock Creek was the first time that this came for you, but like coming out of breath and very vividly drawing.
Mm,
And you were drawing
mhm,
such beautiful pieces. And so I love that you've teamed up with someone who that's just what they do.
mm. Actually, yeah, now that you make that connection, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so true. And I
Yeah.
was talking about painting, what I was seeing, that the sort
Hmm.
of light language visuals that I was
Hmm.
receiving.
Yeah.
And I actually just bought a canvas the other day. I've done painting and that, but with the intention of
Oh my
painting
gosh.
that. So
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
finally,
Yay. Hey,
two
and
years
all
later.
perfect time, all perfect
Yeah.
timing.
Oh, yeah.
And then the other thing I was going to say is so like conscious connected breath work is what we've been talking about. And that is, I sort of describe it as like a branch off of holotropic breath work and I know that you know this, but just for the people listening, holotropic breath work um, traditionally is it's like a 3 hour breath journey, upwards of 3 hours. It's relatively intense. It's like really intense. And then it completes with an immediate art creation where you actually I don't know if it's painting or just like crayons and pencil crayons, but it's like mandala and you
Mm,
put your experience into art. And that's how they like integrate and close the space. And so it couldn't be more perfect. It
yeah.
couldn't be more perfect. I love it
I
so
actually
much.
didn't know that. That's amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's traditionally how a holotropic
Mm,
session would be run. Not that it's
hmm.
always run that way anymore, but a traditional session.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's going to be very, very special.
And
And
say
we
the
have,
dates again.
yeah, April 4th to 6th,
Okay.
2025. So coming up
Mm-hmm.
in just a few months, I feel like the time's going to go by so fast.
It is. Yeah.
And we're at the Earth Spring Sanctuary. So it's a really, really beautiful environment that we're staying in.
Mm-hmm.
Tons of arbutus trees, and actually some of them are like built. The buildings are kind of built around some of these trees. And so there's little cabins. There's kind of a lodge with private rooms, and then there's the ceremony space is actually up. So you take this little trail to walk up to the space where we're going to be gathering together.
It's such a beautiful space.
Have you been
Mhm.
there before?
I have. I've led
Yeah.
retreat there and I did my Vipassana there. So
Mm,
I was silently there for 10 days, 5 days
that would be amazing.
in the snow.
Oh,
It was, and like no one's speaking, and you're doing like slow walking meditation in the snow. It was stunning. It was stunning.
mm.
Oh,
Just like
um,
that little crunch of snow.
yes.
Hmm.
Oh, it was so special. Okay, I'm gonna put that link in the show notes for people who are wanting to attend. Is there still space?
There are spaces left. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I'll do
Not a
that.
ton, but a few.
Great.
Yeah.
I'm by no means am I rushing this. I wanted to just get that out, but I'm just curious if there's other things present for you that we can dive into.
Mm. I wrote a few notes before. I think we've covered.
Mm,
Yeah,
always resort back to the notes.
always the notes.
Mhm.
No, I think we've covered
It feels
what I wanted to
complete.
talk about today. Hmm.
Okay, so outside of retreat, tell us a little bit about your work and how people can find you. And I know you're based in Victoria. I don't know if you work with clients online, if they have to be here. What's that look like?
Yeah, yeah. So I'm based in Victoria. I have a clinic space that is near the Jubilee Hospital, so sort of Oak Bay Ave in Richmond. We have a really beautiful, sort of little upper like studio space clinic that we've been in for almost a year now.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I love that space. It's my pride and joy. When I first created it, I or first started, took over the space and started decorating, I was like, I want the reception area to feel like someone's living room. Like I want you to walk in. Actually, it's the vibe for the whole place, like so cozy.
Yeah.
And then I had someone come in one time to see another one of the clinicians that work here, and the person goes, "Does someone live here?" I was
Really?
like, "Yeah." They're like, "Is this an apartment?" I was like, "Oh, I did it. I did it too good. I need to like put in some more signage, I think, and make it look a little bit more officey." So, yeah, we have the coziest office, and I do
Amazing.
work with clients online as well.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
beautiful. And are you taking clients right now?
I personally am not taking clients
Okay.
until for a couple months. I think March I'll have some space to reopen
Okay.
for new clients. But Mandy, my art therapist, as well as
Hmm.
Shamika, we have another lovely, lovely therapist on our team. She does art therapy and counseling as well. So they are both
Amazing.
available and highly recommended. So at the
Okay.
clinic, we do have space. For me personally, it's a little bit of a wait right now.
Okay. It's a good thing.
Yeah,
That's a
yeah.
good thing. Yeah. Not
It
mad
is.
about it.
It is, and it's not right. It's hard because
Hmm.
as the omnipresent people pleaser, I have such a hard time saying no to new
Hmm.
clients, and I
Hmm.
want to take everyone on, but I
Hmm.
also, in honor of Flower Child Sarah, I have made a promise not to
Oh,
overschedule myself, and
good
so
girl.
that means, yeah, staying,
Hmm.
having capacity for the clients that I'm already working with and not
Hmm.
overbooking myself in that sense, but also for myself in
Yeah.
order to make sure that I'm taking care of myself. So
Yeah.
there's that kind of
Practicing
always
what you
that
preach.
cycle. Mhm.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Well, it's not so much no, it's just not right now.
Exactly.
It's just not right now. They can
Mm.
wait. They can wait.
But that's also part of the motivation to move towards offering more of these group programs
Yeah.
and retreats and things like that as well, right? Is to be able to
Hmm.
um, work with multiple people. We
Hmm.
do have as well, I'll share this actually because I think the podcast is going to be coming out relatively soon. Hopefully it's
It
going to be
is.
before the date, but we're doing a 5 day like intensive program January 20th to 24th. We're just about to launch it. So
Okay.
Confidence Queen for women who
Oh.
are looking to, yeah, start off 2025 feeling empowered to be able to
Hmm.
dive into what's important to them. I know this time of year, the kind of New Year's resolution conversation is like so
Hmm.
present. And I know that
Hmm.
um, you're not really someone who does set New Year's resolutions, right? There's lots of
Yeah.
people that are trying to navigate, okay, like what's next? And so I think I'm going to make an assumption that one of the reasons, and maybe you can tell me, oftentimes New Year's resolutions carry this energy of like, oh, well, now is this time where I have to like make this difference, but we're not actually addressing like what's important about making this change. Like, what are the values underlying this? What is
Hmm.
meaningful about this? And
Hmm.
and doing that mindset work, and that can really happen at any time of year.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to
Yeah.
be the new year.
Yeah. Well,
So,
and I suggest that it happens a few times a year.
yeah,
Like
I
it's
agree.
spring,
Hmm.
fall,
Hmm.
anytime, Tuesday, anytime,
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's fun. Give me the link. Send me the link. That'll go in as well. Because, yes, this is going to go out on the 13th. So a week. I don't know if your doors will be open at that point
Yes.
for booking in. Okay, yeah, perfect. So
Yeah.
we're perfectly timed.
Amazing.
Perfectly timed. Thank you, my lovely.
Thank you.
I
It was
appreciate
lovely to
you.
chat with you.
Always a
And
treat.
yeah, I look forward to seeing you soon.
I'll see you in April, but hopefully before that.
I think I'll see you before that.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. Hmm.
Okay. Lots of
All
love.
right. Okay.
Okay.
Bye.
Ciao.